Marcus stood at attention outside the Grand Palace gates, his uniform slightly wrinkled and his boots scuffed from countless hours of practice. At 22 years old, he was the youngest member of the Royal Guard, a position he had earned through determination rather than natural talent. The other guards often whispered behind his back, calling him the charity case, because his father had been a simple blacksmith in the village. The morning sun cast long shadows across the cobblestone courtyard as Marcus tried to ignore the snickers coming from his fellow guards. Captain Reynolds, a stern man with graying hair and countless battle scars, was conducting the monthly shooting assessment. Each guard had to demonstrate their archery skills by hitting targets placed at various distances. Thompson. "You're up first," Captain Reynolds called out. James Thompson, a tall and muscular guard with perfect posture, stepped forward confidently. He had been with the Royal Guard for 5 years and never missed an opportunity to show off his skills. Thompson drew his bow with practiced ease, the arrow flying straight and true to hit the center of the target 50 yards away. The other guards nodded approvingly. "Excellent work, Thompson," the captain said, making notes on his clipboard. "Williams, you're next." Sarah Williams, one of the few female guards, stepped up and performed equally well, her arrow landing just inches from Thompson's. She had earned her place through exceptional skill and had proven herself in several dangerous situations protecting the royal family. One by one, the experienced guards took their turns, each displaying the precision and confidence expected of elite protectors. Their arrows found their marks with satisfying thuds, and quiet congratulations were exchanged among the group. Finally, Captain Reynolds looked at his list and called out, "Henderson, you're last!" Marcus felt his heart rate increase as all eyes turned to him. He could hear Thompson muttering to Williams, "This should be entertaining. Watch him embarrass himself again." Other guards chuckled softly, remembering Marcus's previous attempts during training sessions. Marcus had joined the Royal Guard 6 months ago, and his journey had been anything but smooth. During his initial training, he had struggled with every aspect of combat. His sword work was clumsy, his horse riding was unsteady, and most notably, his archery was absolutely terrible. He had missed targets completely, shot arrows into the ground, and once even accidentally hit a chicken wandering through the practice yard. The other guards had initially tried to help him, offering advice and encouragement. But as weeks passed and Marcus showed little improvement, their patience wore thin. Some began to question how he had even been accepted into their elite unit. Rumors spread that his acceptance was somehow connected to political favors or family connections, though Marcus had never revealed the true circumstances of his recruitment. What the other guards didn't know was that Marcus had saved the life of a royal messenger who had been attacked by bandits on the road to the village. The messenger had been carrying important documents about a planned attack on the kingdom's northern border. Marcus had fought off 3 armed men using nothing but a blacksmith's hammer and his determination to protect the innocent. When the messenger reported this act of bravery to the royal court, Marcus was immediately offered a position in the Royal Guard. However, Marcus had asked that this story not be shared with his fellow guards. He wanted to earn their respect through his own abilities, not through a single act of heroism. This decision had backfired spectacularly, as his lack of natural combat skills made him appear unworthy of his position. As Marcus approached the shooting line, he could feel the weight of everyone's expectations. The target seemed impossibly far away, and his hands were already beginning to shake slightly from nervousness. He had spent countless hours practicing in secret, sneaking out to the woods behind his quarters to work on his technique. Despite his dedication, his improvement had been minimal. "Take your time, Henderson," Captain Reynolds said, though his tone suggested he expected nothing remarkable. "Remember, this assessment determines your continued eligibility for active duty assignments." Marcus nodded and selected an arrow from his quiver. The arrowhead gleamed in the sunlight, and he could see his reflection distorted in the metal tip. He thought about his father, who had worked long hours at the forge to provide for their family. He thought about the royal messenger who had believed in him enough to recommend him for this position. Most of all, he thought about the dreams he had harbored since childhood of serving something greater than himself. Thompson leaned over to Williams and whispered loudly enough for others to hear, "I bet he doesn't even hit the target board. Maybe we should set up a bucket to catch his arrows when they fall short." The comment drew more snickers from the group, and Marcus felt his face flush with embarrassment. He had endured months of similar treatment, and each joke chipped away at his confidence a little more. Part of him wondered if they were right, if he truly didn't belong among these skilled warriors. Marcus raised his bow and nocked the arrow, trying to remember everything he had learned during his secret practice sessions. His instructor, an old retired guard named Edgar who lived in the village, had taught him to focus on his breathing and to trust his instincts. Edgar had seen something in Marcus that others had missed, a potential that just needed the right guidance to emerge. The bow felt heavy in his hands as he drew back the string. The target seemed to waver in his vision as sweat beaded on his forehead. He could hear his heartbeat pounding in his ears, drowning out the quiet conversations of his fellow guards. This was his moment to prove himself, to show that he deserved to wear the royal crest on his uniform. But as Marcus held the drawn bow, his arm began to tremble from the strain. The arrow wobbled slightly, and he could see Thompson shaking his head in anticipation of another failure. Marcus had always struggled with the physical demands of archery, lacking the natural strength and steady hand that seemed to come so easily to the others. He released the arrow, and it flew through the air in what seemed like slow motion. The guards watched its trajectory, some with barely concealed amusement, others with genuine sympathy for the young man who tried so hard despite his obvious limitations. The arrow struck the outer edge of the target with a dull thud, far from the center, but at least making contact with the board. It was by far Marcus's best shot during any official assessment, though still nowhere near the standard expected of a Royal Guard member. Captain Reynolds made a note on his clipboard without comment, while the other guards exchanged knowing looks. Thompson couldn't resist making another comment. Well, at least he hit something this time. Maybe in another year or two he'll manage to hit the actual scoring area. Marcus felt a mixture of relief and disappointment as he returned to his position in line. He had avoided complete humiliation, but he was still far from proving himself worthy of his fellow guards' respect. The assessment was over, but Marcus knew that the real test of his abilities was yet to come. 3 weeks after the archery assessment, Marcus found himself assigned to the most mundane duties available to the Royal Guard. While Thompson and Williams were chosen for important escort missions and palace security details, Marcus was relegated to checking supply inventories and maintaining equipment. The message was clear. He was not considered ready for any real responsibility. The daily routine of cleaning weapons and counting arrows gave Marcus plenty of time to think about his situation. He watched from the armory window as the other guards conducted advanced training exercises, their movements fluid and confident. Every evening, he continued his secret practice sessions with Edgar in the woods, slowly improving but still far behind his peers. Edgar, a weathered man in his 60s who had served the Royal Guard for 30 years, never lost faith in Marcus despite his slow progress. "Skill isn't everything, boy," Edgar would say as they practiced by lamplight. "Heart and determination count for more than people realize. I've seen natural talents crumble under pressure and seen unlikely heroes rise when it mattered most." During one of their evening sessions, Edgar shared stories from his days as an active guard. He told Marcus about battles where quick thinking mattered more than perfect aim, and situations where courage overcame superior skill. These stories gave Marcus hope, but they also made him wonder if he would ever get the chance to prove himself in a real situation. The opportunity came sooner than anyone expected, and in a way that no one could have anticipated. It was a crisp autumn morning when urgent news arrived at the palace. A messenger rode in at full gallop, his horse lathered with sweat and his uniform dusty from hard travel. King Edward himself came out to hear the report, accompanied by his most trusted advisers and Captain Reynolds. "Your Majesty," the messenger gasped, still catching his breath. "Princess Isabella's convoy has been attacked by bandits in the forest of Thornwood. The initial escort fought bravely, but they were outnumbered 3-1. The princess and her remaining guards have barricaded themselves in an abandoned watchtower, but they're surrounded and running low on supplies." The king's face darkened with worry and anger. Princess Isabella was his only daughter and the heir to the throne. She had been traveling to a neighboring kingdom for diplomatic negotiations that could prevent a potential war. The success of her mission was crucial for the kingdom's future. "How many bandits?" Captain Reynolds asked, already mentally preparing for a rescue mission. "Our scout estimates at least 30 armed men, possibly more," the messenger replied. "They're well organized and led by someone with military experience. This wasn't a random attack. It appears to be a coordinated attempt to capture the princess for ransom or political leverage." Captain Reynolds immediately began selecting guards for the rescue mission. Time was critical, as the bandits might decide to storm the watchtower if negotiations dragged on too long. The captain chose his most experienced and skilled fighters: Thompson for his marksmanship, Williams for her tactical expertise, Davies for his knowledge of the local terrain, and 3 other seasoned veterans. As the selected guards gathered their gear and prepared to ride out, Marcus approached Captain Reynolds with a request he knew was likely to be denied. "Captain, I'd like to volunteer for the rescue mission," Marcus said, trying to keep his voice steady and professional. Captain Reynolds looked at him with a mixture of surprise and concern. "Henderson, this is an extremely dangerous operation. These aren't training targets. These are experienced killers who won't hesitate to put an arrow through your heart. I need guards I can count on completely." "I understand the risks, sir," Marcus replied. "But Princess Isabella's life is at stake. Every available guard should be part of this mission. I may not be the best archer, but I can follow orders, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to bring her home safely." Thompson overheard the conversation and couldn't resist interjecting. "Captain, with all due respect, bringing Henderson along would be like carrying dead weight. He'll slow us down and put the rest of the team at risk. This is too important for charity cases." Other guards nodded in agreement, though some seemed uncomfortable with Thompson's harsh words. Williams spoke up in a more diplomatic tone. "Marcus, we appreciate your willingness to help, but this mission requires split-second precision. Every member of the team needs to be completely reliable under extreme pressure." Marcus felt the familiar sting of rejection, but this time it was different. This wasn't about his wounded pride or his desire to prove himself. This was about saving the life of an innocent person who was counting on the royal guard for protection. The same instinct that had driven him to fight the bandits who attacked the royal messenger now compelled him to volunteer for this dangerous mission. "Captain Reynolds," Marcus said, his voice growing stronger with conviction, "I know my archery scores don't inspire confidence, but I've never failed to complete an assignment, no matter how difficult. I've never shirked my duty or put my own safety above my responsibilities. If there's even a small chance that an additional guard could make the difference between success and failure, isn't it worth considering?" Captain Reynolds studied Marcus carefully, weighing his options. The young guard's determination was evident, but so were his limitations. In a life-or-death situation, good intentions wouldn't be enough to overcome lack of skill. Before the captain could respond, an elderly advisor who had been listening to the conversation stepped forward. Sir Edmund had served the royal family for 40 years and had seen many crises come and go. His counsel was highly valued by the king. "Captain," Sir Edmund said quietly, "perhaps we should consider all available options. The bandits will be expecting a small, elite force. They may not be prepared for a larger group approaching from multiple directions. Sometimes unconventional tactics succeed where traditional approaches fail. The suggestion gave Captain Reynolds pause. The mission would indeed be dangerous, and having additional personnel could provide strategic advantages. However, he also couldn't ignore the risk of bringing someone whose combat abilities were questionable. After a long moment of consideration, Captain Reynolds made his decision. "Henderson, I'm not taking you as a primary assault member, but I will bring you as a support operative. Your job will be to maintain communications, assist with logistics, and provide backup only if specifically ordered. You will not engage in direct combat unless there is absolutely no alternative. Do you understand these conditions?" Marcus felt a surge of gratitude mixed with determination. "Yes, sir. I understand completely." "You won't regret this decision." Thompson shook his head in disapproval, but didn't argue further. The other guards seemed resigned to the captain's choice, though their expressions suggested they shared Thompson's concerns about Marcus's readiness for such a critical mission. As the rescue team prepared to depart, Marcus gathered his equipment with careful attention to every detail. He checked his bow 3 times, counted his arrows twice, and made sure his sword was properly secured. Edgar appeared as Marcus was tightening his horse's saddle straps. "I heard about the mission," Edgar said quietly. "This is your chance, boy. Not to prove anything to them, but to prove something to yourself. Trust your training and trust your instincts. When the moment comes, you'll know what to do." Marcus nodded, feeling both nervous and determined. As the rescue team rode out through the palace gates, he couldn't shake the feeling that everything in his life had been leading to this moment. The mocking and doubts of his fellow guards faded into the background as he focused on the task ahead, bringing Princess Isabella home safely. The rescue team rode hard through the morning, covering ground quickly as they headed toward the forest of Thornwood. Captain Reynolds set a punishing pace, knowing that every minute of delay could cost Princess Isabella her life. The horses' hooves thundered against the dirt road, kicking up clouds of dust that marked their urgent passage. Marcus struggled to keep up with the more experienced riders, his horse working harder than the others to maintain the formation. Thompson occasionally glanced back with obvious annoyance, clearly viewing Marcus as a liability that would slow down the mission. Despite the challenging pace, Marcus was determined not to give anyone additional reasons to doubt his presence on the team. As they approached the edge of the forest, Captain Reynolds called for a halt to review their strategy. The team dismounted and gathered around a crude map that Davies had sketched in the dirt, showing the layout of the watchtower and surrounding terrain based on the messenger's report. "The bandits have positioned themselves in a rough circle around the tower," Davies explained, pointing to various spots on his improvised map. "They're staying just outside arrow range from the tower windows, but close enough to prevent any escape attempts. Our scout counted at least 6 guards on the north side, 8 on the east, and similar numbers on the west and south." Captain Reynolds studied the tactical situation carefully. A direct assault would be suicide against such overwhelming numbers. They needed to use stealth and surprise to their advantage, picking off isolated targets and creating confusion in the bandit ranks. "We'll approach from the southwest, using the thick undergrowth for cover," the captain decided. "Thompson and Williams will position themselves on the ridge overlooking the clearing. From there, they can provide covering fire and take out key targets. Davies and Martinez will circle around to create a distraction on the opposite side. Henderson, you'll stay with me as we move closer to assess the situation and coordinate the attack." Marcus nodded, understanding that his role was still primarily supportive. Part of him was relieved not to be assigned to direct combat, but another part wished he could prove himself alongside the others. The team secured their horses in a hidden grove and began moving through the dense forest on foot. The autumn leaves crunched softly under their boots, despite their efforts to move silently. Marcus found himself impressed by how quietly the experienced guards could navigate through the underbrush. barely disturbing the vegetation as they advanced. As they got closer to the watchtower, they could hear voices in the distance. The bandits were clearly confident in their position, talking and laughing without concern for stealth. Some were even playing dice games while they waited, treating the siege as a leisurely afternoon activity. Captain Reynolds held up his hand to signal a stop, then motioned for the team to take cover behind a fallen log. Through the gaps in the trees, they could see the ancient stone watchtower rising about 60 feet into the air. Smoke was rising from one of the upper windows, suggesting that Princess Isabella and her guards were still alive and had managed to create some warmth and comfort in their refuge. The bandits had indeed surrounded the tower as reported. Marcus counted at least 25 men that he could see, though he knew there were likely more hidden in the forest. They were well armed with swords, crossbows, and shields, and their disciplined positioning suggested military training. Captain Reynolds whispered instructions to his team, sending Thompson and Williams to their elevated position, while Davies and Martinez began their flanking maneuver. Marcus remained beside the captain, watching the situation develop and trying to identify any opportunities to assist the rescue effort. From their hiding spot, they could hear one of the bandit leaders shouting up at the tower. "Princess, you've had enough time to consider our generous offer. Surrender now and we guarantee your safe passage to our camp. Continue this pointless resistance and we'll be forced to smoke you out." A voice called down from the tower window, strong and defiant despite the circumstances. "I am Princess Isabella of the Northern Kingdom, and I do not negotiate with criminals and murderers. My guards died protecting me, and I would rather join them in death than submit to your demands." The bandit leader laughed harshly. "Your bravery is admirable but foolish, Your Highness. We have all day and all night. Eventually, hunger and thirst will succeed where our threats have failed. Make this easy on yourself and come down peacefully." Marcus felt his anger rising at the casual cruelty in the man's voice. Princess Isabella was trapped and outnumbered, yet she maintained her dignity and courage in the face of overwhelming odds. Her defiance reminded him of the stories Edgar had told about true nobility. Not the accident of birth, but the choice to stand for what was right, regardless of personal cost. Captain Reynolds was studying the bandit positions through a small telescope, identifying targets for his marksmen and looking for weaknesses in their formation. The tactical challenge was immense. They needed to neutralize enough bandits quickly to prevent them from storming the tower, while also avoiding any actions that might provoke immediate retaliation against the princess. Suddenly, Marcus noticed something that the others had missed. One of the bandits had climbed partway up a tall oak tree that stood about 30 yards from the tower. From that elevated position, the bandit had a clear shot at the tower windows and was carefully aiming a crossbow. If he fired, he could easily kill Princess Isabella or wound her severely enough to force her surrender. Marcus whispered urgently to Captain Reynolds, pointing out the hidden archer. The captain immediately saw the threat, but realized that none of their positioned marksmen had a clear shot at the tree climber. Thompson and Williams were too far to the right, and Davies and Martinez were still moving into position on the far side of the clearing. "We need to take him out now," Captain Reynolds whispered. "If he gets that shot off, this whole mission fails." The captain raised his own bow, but at that moment, several bandits moved between his position and the tree, blocking his line of sight. Time was running out as the archer in the tree steadied his aim, preparing to fire the shot that would end the rescue mission before it truly began. Marcus saw the situation developing and realized that his position offered the only clear angle to the tree. Without conscious thought, all of Edgar's training and months of secret practice came together in a moment of perfect clarity. The doubts and fears that had plagued him for so long simply disappeared. "Captain," Marcus whispered, "I have the shot." Captain Reynolds looked at Marcus with surprise and concern. The distance to the target was at least 40 yards through dense forest, with only a small gap between tree branches offering a clear path to the archer. It was an extremely difficult shot under the best circumstances and nearly impossible under the current pressure. "Henderson, that's an expert-level shot. If you miss, you'll give away our position and compromise the entire rescue." Marcus understood the stakes completely, but he also understood that sometimes duty required taking risks regardless of the consequences. The princess's life hung in the balance, and he might be the only person in position to save her. "Sir, I know I can make this shot," Marcus said with quiet confidence that surprised even himself. "Trust me." For a moment that seemed to last forever, Captain Reynolds studied Marcus's face. What he saw there was not the uncertain young guard who had struggled through training, but a determined warrior ready to do whatever was necessary to complete the mission. "Take the shot," the captain whispered. Marcus drew his bow with movements that felt both familiar and entirely new. All the hours of secret practice, all the patient instruction from Edgar, and all the determination built from months of ridicule came together in this single moment. His breathing steadied, his hands stopped shaking, and the world seemed to slow around him. The bandit in the tree was nearly finished, aiming his crossbow at the tower window where Princess Isabella's silhouette was visible. One more second, and he would fire the shot that could kill the future queen and destroy any hope of a peaceful resolution to the kingdom's growing conflicts. Marcus focused completely on his target, blocking out everything else around him. Edgar's voice echoed in his memory. "Don't think about the shot, boy. Trust your instincts, and let your body do what it knows how to do." The arrow felt perfectly balanced in his fingers as he drew back the bowstring, the tension building with precise control. He could see the bandit's finger tightening on his crossbow trigger. There was no time for doubt or hesitation. Marcus released his arrow and watched it fly through the narrow gap between tree branches, threading through the forest canopy with impossible precision. The arrow struck the bandit directly in the chest, sending him tumbling from the tree with a crash that echoed through the forest. His crossbow fell harmlessly to the ground, the deadly shot never fired. For a moment, the entire clearing fell silent as both the rescue team and the remaining bandits tried to understand what had just happened. Captain Reynolds stared at Marcus in complete amazement. The shot had been absolutely perfect. Not just accurate, but timed with split-second precision under enormous pressure. The young guard who had struggled to hit stationary targets in practice had just made one of the most difficult combat shots the captain had ever witnessed. The silence was broken by shouting from the bandit camp as they realized they were under attack. The remaining bandits scrambled for defensive positions, but they were confused and disorganized by the sudden appearance of skilled opponents they hadn't expected to face. Thompson and Williams opened fire from their ridge position, their arrows finding their marks with deadly accuracy. Two more bandits fell before the others could properly organize a response. Davies and Martinez launched their diversionary attack from the eastern edge of the clearing, forcing several bandits to turn their attention away from the tower. The coordinated assault threw the bandit camp into chaos, but they were still dangerously outnumbered. Captain Reynolds knew they had achieved tactical surprise, but they needed to press their advantage quickly before the bandits could mount an effective counterattack. "Henderson, that was an incredible shot," the captain whispered as they moved to a new position. "Stay close and keep your eyes open for more opportunities." Marcus felt a surge of confidence unlike anything he had ever experienced. The months of doubt and self-questioning seemed to melt away as he realized he could indeed perform under pressure when lives depended on his skills. Edgar had been right. Courage and determination could overcome natural limitations when the cause was just. As the battle continued around the clearing, Marcus found himself moving with newfound purpose and clarity. When a bandit tried to outflank Thompson's position, Marcus spotted the threat and put an arrow through the man's shoulder, stopping the attack. When several bandits attempted to charge Williams, Marcus provided covering fire that forced them to seek shelter instead. Each shot Marcus fired found its target with precision that amazed even himself. It was as if all his previous failures had been preparation for this moment, teaching him lessons about accuracy and timing that he couldn't have learned any other way. The mockery and doubts of his fellow guards now seemed like distant memories from another lifetime. Thompson, firing from his elevated position, couldn't help but notice Marcus's transformation. The same guard who had barely managed to hit the outer edge of a practice target was now placing arrows exactly where they needed to go in the heat of combat. Thompson's preconceptions about Marcus began to crumble as he watched the young guard perform with skill that rivaled the most experienced veterans. Princess Isabella, watching the battle from her tower window, could see that her rescuers were fighting with exceptional skill and coordination. She grabbed a horn from one of her fallen guards and blew 3 sharp blasts, the royal signal for assistance acknowledged, letting the rescue team know she was still safe and ready to cooperate with their plan. The bandit leader, realizing that his force was being systematically destroyed by a smaller but far more skilled enemy, decided to make a desperate gamble. He grabbed a torch and began running toward the base of the tower, shouting to his remaining men to follow him. If he could set fire to the wooden supports inside the stone structure, he might force the princess to surrender before his entire force was eliminated. Captain Reynolds saw the threat immediately, but realized that neither he nor any of his positioned marksmen had a clear shot at the bandit leader. The man was moving too quickly and using his own men as shields, making a direct attack nearly impossible. "Someone needs to stop him before he reaches the tower," the captain called out. Marcus saw the bandit leader's desperate charge and understood that this was the crucial moment of the entire mission. If the tower caught fire, Princess Isabella would face a choice between burning alive and surrendering to men who had already proven their willingness to murder innocent people. Without hesitation, Marcus stepped into the open clearing, exposing himself to crossbow fire from the remaining bandits. He needed a clear shot, and he was willing to risk everything to get it. The bandit leader was 50 yards away and running hard, the torch blazing in his hand as he closed the distance to the tower. Marcus drew his bow one final time, feeling completely calm despite the chaos surrounding him. Crossbow bolts whistled past his head as enemy fighters tried to bring him down, but he remained focused entirely on his target. Edgar's training guided his movements as he calculated distance, wind, and timing in a split second of perfect clarity. The bandit leader was 30 yards from the tower when Marcus released his arrow. It flew straight and true through the battlefield chaos, striking the man directly in the heart and dropping him instantly. The torch fell from his lifeless hands and was extinguished in the damp forest soil, eliminating the threat to Princess Isabella's sanctuary. With their leader dead and their ranks decimated by the precise attacks of the Royal Guard rescue team, the remaining bandits finally broke and fled into the deep forest. Some tried to surrender, but most simply ran for their lives, abandoning their weapons and supplies in their desperate escape. The battle was over. Princess Isabella was safe, and the rescue mission had succeeded beyond anyone's expectations. As the smoke cleared and the echoes of combat faded, the rescue team gathered in the clearing to assess their situation and tend to any wounded. Captain Reynolds approached Marcus with an expression of profound respect and admiration. "Henderson, I owe you an apology. We all do. What you accomplished today, those were shots that master archers would be proud of. You saved the princess's life and quite possibly prevented a war." Thompson, Williams, and the other guards surrounded Marcus, their previous mockery replaced by genuine appreciation and respect. They had all witnessed something extraordinary, a young guard overcoming his limitations to perform heroically when his kingdom needed him most. Princess Isabella descended from the tower with the help of a rope ladder, her royal composure intact despite her ordeal. She walked directly to Marcus and placed her hand on his shoulder. "Sir Marcus," she said formally, "your courage and skill have earned you my eternal gratitude and the gratitude of our entire kingdom. When we return to the palace, I will personally recommend you for the highest honors our realm can bestow." Marcus felt overwhelmed by the recognition, but more importantly, he felt the deep satisfaction of knowing he had proven himself worthy of the trust placed in him. The months of struggle and doubt had led to this moment of triumph, validating Edgar's faith in him and his own determination to serve something greater than himself. As the rescue team prepared for the journey home, Marcus reflected on everything that had brought him to this point. The mockery and challenges he had faced hadn't been obstacles to overcome. They had been the very experiences that shaped him into the guard he needed to become. Every missed shot in practice had taught him something about precision. Every moment of doubt had strengthened his resolve. Every act of ridicule from his peers had motivated him to work harder in secret. The young man who had been mocked for his poor archery skills was gone, replaced by a proven warrior who had demonstrated that true strength came not from natural talent, but from the willingness to persevere in the face of adversity. Marcus Henderson had found his place among the royal guard, earning it not through politics or favoritism, but through courage, determination, and deadly accurate aim when it mattered most. The rescue team rode back to the palace with Princess Isabella safe among them, their mission accomplished and their respect for their youngest member permanently transformed. Marcus rode with his head held high, no longer the charity case or the weak link, but a true guardian of the realm who had proven his worth when the stakes couldn't have been higher.